What's up everybody, this is Master EN Gamer. As I'm sure many of you have already seen, just recently it was announced that Overwatch game director Jeff Kaplan will be leaving Blizzard and will no longer be the game director for Overwatch and Overwatch 2. Now, I already did a video covering my initial thoughts and feelings when this was first announced, but today I wanted to do a follow-up video talking specifically about how Jeff Kaplan's departure is going to impact the development and eventual release of Overwatch 2. And spoiler alert, it's not going to be good. Before I jump into it though, I would just like to remind you to subscribe and hit that bell icon if you end up enjoying this video. I regularly cover Overwatch news and content on this channel, so if you're interested in keeping up with that, then be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. But getting on to Overwatch 2 now, the first thing we can expect to see when it comes to Jeff Kaplan leaving is transition delays. Now, what I mean by transition delays is whenever you have a high-ranking member of a development team or company or whatever, and that person steps down and somebody else has to step into their position, well, there's gonna be delays as the new person gets adjusted to filling in for that person's role. In this specific case, however, Jeff Kaplan is going to be replaced by Aaron Keller, who for a long time has been the associate game director of Overwatch and Overwatch 2, so I don't think there's actually going to be that much of a transition delay since Aaron presumably already knew everything Jeff was working on and probably understood his position pretty well, but we can assume there's going to be some sort of delay just because that's the nature of how transitions like this work. Now, we as the general public are probably never going to see exactly how long this delay ends up being. We don't even know yet when Overwatch 2 is supposed to release, so if the game gets delayed an extra week or an extra month due to this change of power, it's not something we're ever going to notice specifically. However, we can assume that it will be happening internally and thus is a negative impact for Overwatch 2. However, moving on to some of the more severe impacts this is going to have on Overwatch 2, the next big one that I think is going to be actually a fairly significant issue is an identity crisis for Overwatch. Now, this is going to apply to all of Overwatch, not just Overwatch 2, namely because Jeff Kaplan was the face of Overwatch. It's not Tracer, it's not Winston or Reinhardt or any specific hero from the game itself, it's always been Jeff. When I think of Overwatch as a game, as a franchise, as just a word in my head, the face that comes to mind is Jeff Kaplan's face. And now, Jeff Kaplan is no longer a part of Overwatch. So what does that mean for the franchise as a whole? It's like you're taking this fundamental aspect of what made Overwatch Overwatch and just ripping it out. What is Overwatch without Jeff Kaplan? Now, I realize that not every single Overwatch player has such a strong association between Jeff and Overwatch. I'm sure the more casual side of the player base who doesn't really pay attention to the dev team or the dev updates, they probably know of Jeff Kaplan, but they don't really think of him when they hear the word Overwatch. So for them, Jeff's departure isn't really going to mean anything on the surface, but for the rest of us who are super focused on Overwatch and have been covering this game and following it for years, it honestly feels like a core aspect of the game was just ripped out. And thinking about what's going to happen to the franchise going forward with Overwatch 2, the thought of it existing without Jeff being a part of it is just, well, weird. Like, it's already been a couple days since we found out Jeff was going to be leaving, and I still haven't really come to terms with the fact that he's not going to be involved with it anymore. I'm honestly not sure how this is going to end up playing out in the long run. Maybe we'll all get used to the fact that Jeff is just a part of Overwatch history and isn't relevant anymore to the game, or maybe he'll sort of live on as this ghost figure who it's like, we always think of Jeff when we hear Overwatch, even though he hasn't really been involved with it anymore. Again, I think this is probably something that's only going to apply to the more diehard Overwatch fans, such as myself. The typical player, I think, is not going to be too impacted knowing that Jeff leaves, and heck, I'm sure quite a few people are never even going to realize Jeff left, or they'll never even have known he was a person who existed to begin with. But I do think a large portion of the player base knows who Jeff is, they at least know of him, and that's going to tie into the next big impact I think Jeff's departure is going to have, which is the negative publicity. Now, anytime a notable game, movie, TV series, any piece of media that's being developed, anytime you have a piece of media like that and one of the lead people working on it leaves the project, that's never a good sign. Having the literal game director of Overwatch 2 leave mid-development is a very bad sign and probably indicates that there was some disagreement or friction or dissatisfaction inside Activision Blizzard during the game's development, which is likely what led to Jeff's departure. Now, that is just speculation. We don't know exactly why Jeff decided to leave, but regardless of his reason, from the outside, it looks bad. This is going to be very, very bad publicity for Overwatch because people are going to see it and assume, oh, Overwatch is going to be dead on arrival now because, the big guy that everyone associates the game with, he's no longer involved, so why should I care about Overwatch? Now, of course, Overwatch 2 can still be a great game. There's still a number of other very talented developers still working on it, and as I mentioned before, Aaron Keller is going to be stepping into Jeff's position, and we can assume that he's going to do a pretty good job given his track record with working on the game already, but Jeff Kaplan leaving is just going to give a negative image of the game. And that's on top of all the negativity there already is directed at Overwatch 2, from all the misunderstandings back from BlizzCon 2019, to people being frustrated with the lack of content in Overwatch 1 in the wake of Overwatch 2's development. This sort of negative press just really is not something Overwatch 2 needed at this point. And honestly, I'm concerned about how that's going to end up impacting its performance once it finally releases. And speaking of finally releasing, now we get on to the most severe negative repercussions that Overwatch 2 is likely going to face in the wake of Jeff Kaplan's departure, and that's more predatory behaviors from Activision. As I'm sure many of you know, Activision is the parent company of Blizzard and doesn't have the best reputation for being the most consumer-friendly. For a long time, Jeff Kaplan stood as this sort of barrier between the money-hungry managers at Activision and the Overwatch development team, and he'd prevent a lot of predatory, non-gamer-friendly features from getting pushed into Overwatch. In fact, one of the most important selling points of Overwatch 2 for existing Overwatch players is that all the skins, sprays, and other cosmetic items we unlocked from Overwatch 1 will be carried over to Overwatch 2 for free once we start playing the sequel, and we have Jeff Kaplan solely to thank for that. From what we've heard, it sounds like Jeff Kaplan fought Activision management tooth and nail to let players carry their cosmetics over from the first game into the sequel. Without Jeff, every single one of us will be starting from point zero when it comes to the sequel's release. Now, I've seen some people speculate that since Jeff has departed, we're actually going to see Activision go back on that feature and say, oh, you suddenly lose all your cosmetics once you start playing Overwatch 2. Personally, I don't think we're going to end up seeing that happen just because Blizzard already officially announced that cosmetics would carry over to the sequel, so if they were to go back on that after the fact, that would just be a really devastating PR move, and so I don't expect them to do that. But it is still an example of how Jeff Kaplan always had the player's interest first and foremost in mind. More than anything, he wanted to make sure that Overwatch and Overwatch 2 was player-friendly, but now that he's gone, well, we can only hope for the best at the mercy of Activision. It's also fair to assume that Blizzard is going to start rushing the development of things. I can't imagine that Activision is satisfied with how long it's taken for Overwatch 2 to release at this point, so I'm a bit worried that they're just gonna, at this point, force the Overwatch dev team to just rush out Overwatch 2 and release it in an unfinished state. Heaven knows many games end up suffering that fate these days, and Blizzard has always been really good at focusing on finishing a game before releasing it, even if it makes the release of the game take forever. But with more and more of these OG Blizzard developers, such as Jeff Kaplan, now gone from the company, who knows what's going to end up happening? Again, I don't want to discredit Aaron Keller, who's going to be replacing Jeff. It's quite possible that he'll be upholding many of the same values Jeff Kaplan did, and he'll be fighting for the players just the same way Jeff did, but overall, this just isn't gonna be good for Overwatch 2. Honestly, if we could observe two separate timelines at once, I think the timeline where Jeff Kaplan stayed with Overwatch, at least through the initial release of Overwatch 2, I think we'd be getting a better game in that timeline. We'll never know for sure, but just based on my understanding of the game's development and my knowledge of Jeff and the role he's played in the company and in the game's development over the years, I think things are only going to end up being worse with him no longer involved with it. But I think that's going to do it for this video. I normally try to focus on more optimistic topics than this, but just given the recent announcement of Jeff Kaplan's departure, I thought it was important to do a video outlining the sort of impact this is likely to end up having on Overwatch and Overwatch 2 going forward. We can always still keep our fingers crossed and hope that Overwatch 2 will still be great, and it could very well still be great. Again, the game's already been in development for quite a while, and Jeff Kaplan played a large part in the development it's already gone through, so much of his influence is still going to end up in the final product we get, and there are still a number of very talented and passionate developers involved with Overwatch's development, so it's probably not going to be the end of the franchise at this point with Jeff Kaplan leaving, but it won't be the same without him. But anyways, that does it for this video. Definitely let me know your thoughts on how you think Jeff Kaplan's departure is going to impact Overwatch and the development of Overwatch 2 by dropping a comment down below. Be sure to subscribe, hit up that bell icon, follow me on Twitter, and come join my Discord server to hang out and keep up with more optimistic and positive Overwatch news going forward. The next video I have planned should be much more positive than these past couple ones have been, so look forward to that coming soon. And also special thanks to my YouTube channel members who help make these videos possible. If you'd like to join them to earn some cool rewards, then just hit that join button down below. And otherwise, this is Master Ian Gamer signing off, and until next time, have a great day.